Fixed bayonets, comrades. This is the Chief Guard of the Republic radio show with your co-hosts Mike Tooman and Paul Burvid every Saturday, noon until 2, WRMN, 1410 AM, the Fox River Valley Media Network, streaming on WRMN1410.com. The studio number here is 847-931-1410. You can text us at 505-926-1410, or you can hit us up in the comments on the YouTube Live channel, WRMN 1410's YouTube Live channel. Hey, Paul, how's it going?
Good. Happy Valentine's Day.
Happy Valentine's Day. I was at the Blue Box Cafe. There, you know, there's a plug. You know, I don't get anything for it. You know, that's where I buy my sandwich. And the guy says, "Are you going to work Valentine's Day into your show?" And I says, "I sure am, but I don't know what that has to do with national defense." And then I thought of it. I go, "Remember what you're fighting for, boys and girls. Happy Valentine's Day."
Amen.
All right. So, this show gets my blood up. It gets me angry at times, and then I gotta calm down on the way home and everything, so I'm not ramming into people and go driving off the road because I'm so upset or whatever. And what gets me is the absolute laziness, complete laziness of our elected officials. Like, I thought, when I was in the Army, I says, is this guy going to do something or whatever? I says, always bet on lazy. Always bet on them doing the easiest thing possible or the least amount of work possible. Always bet on lazy. But you can do that with our government now. And I know I wanted to talk about the SAVE Act today because it passed the House, pretty much a majority, passed the House. But it goes to the Senate, and they go, "Oh, they need 60 votes in the Senate." Well, no, they don't. They don't need 60 votes in the Senate. But that would be the nuclear option. But here's the thing. I love the way they use these words. Nuclear option, like it's the end of everything. Like the world's going to end. It's the nuclear option. Our government's going to collapse. Your Social Security checks won't come in. All this other stuff. They like to push that. It's just for a thing called the filibuster. And I remember in history class and civics classes, which, we learned a little about civics, about a filibuster. And anyone that's familiar with like Robert's Rules of Order, because that's what the Senate kind of runs on. They have their own rules. And what they have is debate. So having been the commander of my Legion post and the Grand Knight for my Knights of Columbus, you learn a little bit things about running a meeting. And when someone makes a motion and that motion is seconded, right? And then you have discussion, right? So everyone discusses this. And you can have unlimited discussion. It could go on forever until such time as some guy makes a motion to table it. Right, to stop the discussion. It's not motion to vote, but it's motion to stop the discussion. Well, the filibuster is where the minority party, knowing that they're going to lose a simple majority vote, decides that they're going to continue on with debate, which means they're just going to talk for hours and hours and hours, as long as they can, while people in the background start drumming up votes for them. Right? So, where they start talking to people to try to defeat this. And that's all well and good. Back in the day, people would stand up. They'd have people holding them up. They've had people like practically moving their mouth for them because they were so tired. They would be up there for hours and hours and hours. And no one else would, then you have the next person come up and they're just going to do this for hours to lock up the process so you can't vote. All right? Now, they say, "Oh, you need the 60 votes because they'll filibuster." Well, they threatened to filibuster. That's it. It's just a threat. Who was the last one that did that? That was that Hakeem Jeffries, right? He went up there and he talked, right? But, well, at least the dude did it, right? I'd be like, yeah, you're threatening filibuster? Do it. Get up there. Get up there, talk. Go on, talk. Do it. Do it. Oh, TV will be on you and everything. Oh, you're filibustering. What are you going to say? Every word you say is going to be recorded. It's going to come back on you. No one's going to write you a 3-day speech or a 12-hour speech. So rather than just go, oh, he threatened it, we don't have to do it. That's lazy. They're like, oh, well, they won't force me to do that. Yeah, they will. But it seems like an old boys lazy club. Lazy club. No one's sitting there and saying, do it. Get up there, filibuster. We'll sit here. We won't close. It's a 3-day weekend. It's Valentine's Day. My wife is expecting something, but my girlfriend on the side is expecting a little more. I got to be back for Valentine's Day. And you're like, no, I'm going to filibuster. You're going to sit here. Everyone's going to sit here. Because as soon as you leave, we're going to have a floor vote. And maybe we'll get to, maybe we'll get the in-person vote and we'll be good. But they do that for each other, not for us, not for the American people. They're doing it for each other. They're like, oh, man, I want to be lazy. I want to be lazy, too. Okay, so I'm just going to say I'm filibustering. You're not going to make me do it. Nah, we won't make you do it because we don't really want to vote. Forget that. And here is what they call the whole nuclear option. And this is great. This is fantastic. So someone gets up and goes to the president of the Senate or the majority, whoever's president of the Senate is at the time, which the president pro tem of the Senate is vice president. And he goes, Mr. President, I make a motion that we declare this a non-debatable item, right? That this item coming up, we declare it non-debatable, which means that the filibuster doesn't apply because it only applies to debatable items. And the president goes, you are overruled, sir. This is a debatable item. And then he goes, I appeal to the floor. And then they have a simple majority vote that overturns the president of the Senate's ruling. And now it is a non-debatable item. So now you vote on it, and it's a 51%, right? And it could work either way. Something come up that's a non-debatable item, and you go, Mr. President, I make a motion that we make this a debatable item. And he goes, you're overruled, and then call for a vote from the floor. So even though the president is supposedly the president of the Senate, the president pro tem of the Senate, not the president himself, even though he's on your side, he rules against you, but he rules against you because he knows that a vote from the floor is going to overrule him. Right? So that is the big thing it'll destroy our democracy. No, it's still a simple majority vote. It's not like one person is carrying this on. It goes to majority vote instead of a supermajority vote. And that's what you do. And you don't have the problem with a filibuster. And this has been used before by Republicans and Democrats. Not just, this isn't a loophole that they suddenly found. It's been used by both sides to change an item. And it was used by the Republicans, right, to what you had was the Democrats said, listen, we want a 51% simple majority for judges, for appointment of judges, right, federal judges. And they said, no, that's a debatable item. We could filibuster you. You need 60. You need the supermajority, right? And they go, Mr. President of the Senate, I make a motion that all judge appointments are hereby simple majority vote. And he goes, no, you're overruled. And then they have a vote from the floor. He says, I appeal to the floor. And the floor has a vote, and they overrule the president pro tem of the Senate. And now it becomes case law. Like, all right, so we did it once. Now we're going to do it the same way all the way over until they reverse that. But they had an exception to that for the Supreme Court. But then Mitch McConnell comes in, and at the same time, with the simple majority to get under President Trump's first term to get Justice Gorsuch in, right? He put that option saying that I moved that all appointments for the Supreme Court be moved to a simple majority, right? and then he was overruled, and then it came back, and it was like motion from the floor, and then he had the floor vote, and he won. All right? So that's what gets me right now about them not voting on the SAVE Act. I think this is because they said, oh, this is one that we could have debate on. It's been, here's my thing, right? This stuff is debated in the press and in the public and in a court of public opinion ad nauseum before it even comes up. So, Paul, I've been talking now. You're the juris expert. Am I way off on this?
No, I think you're right. It's it reminds me, again, nothing is really new. The 1939 movie, Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, about a guy that, they put him in the Senate and he realized something's wrong. And, it's loosely based on a thing that happened with the Teapot Dome scandal. And, but whatever, filibusters, whatever, could be used for good things or it could be used for bad things. Let's get down to real brass tacks though. So what's the deal with the SAVE Act, okay? And what's it require you to be a citizen to vote? And how do you prove your citizenship? You have an ID, okay?
Wow.
Is that a bad thing?
No, that's too difficult for me. I can't even imagine it. How would I ever get an ID? It's too expensive and it's too complicated and the forms are unbelievable. And oh my God, I'll never be able to do it. And they're just keeping me from voting. That's all. They're keeping me from voting because they're, wait a second. I had to get on an airplane, so I had to get a real ID. And why do we, it's the simplest thing in the world. But some people don't have access to their stuff.
Well, no, that's not it. They know that people that shouldn't vote are going to vote, and they need every last single vote. That's why they do this.
So here,
we mentioned this before, and I'll mention this again. Okay, when you're a prosecutor, you go out in the field like every 2 years, twice, and so. In 30 years, I did it 60 times, okay? And what you do is you go out on election day. Some of you go out a little bit before and where there's early voting, And I was with my partner and we got assigned the western suburbs, okay? And I actually think this might have been a local election, though. And you have to hit so many places. And we try to hit, 40 or 50 places, and that's not hard to do. And then you go have lunch, then you hit 10 before lunch, you hit go have breakfast, you go hit 10, you have lunch, you hit 10, and then you have dinner, and then you hit 10, and then you close the place out. So I'm with my partner, and she's Hispanic, and I'm of course I'm a white guy. We go into Cicero and we hit the front door and they say, you'll be wanting to see Eric Estrada. Okay. And I look at my partner, I go, holy cow, you think Ponch is here? And it's a big, brand new school. So we walk about 300 yards and we go and somebody goes, oh, who are you guys? I go, we're from the states attorney's office. Oh, you'll be wanting to see Eric Estrada. And I'm thinking, holy cow, this must be Ponch, all right? So we walk and then we come to the door of the big gymnasium, which is another 100 yards or so. And the people at the front door, who are you? Yeah, we're from the state's attorney's office. You'll be wanting to see Eric Estrada. Now I'm really psyched, okay?
Yeah.
So we go up to the table. And I go, everybody tells me I'll be wanting to see Eric Estrada. And Eric Estrada's the election judge, and it's not Ponch. So I'm totally disappointed.
I know.
And I go, what's the deal, Eric? And he's got like a crumbled up, ripped up set of papers in his hand. Now I've seen this once before. in a scam where a woman tried to get a contract from a car dealer, and she had the same, had the same rip pattern. I go, okay, I'm sensing something bad here. What is this? Well, I'm Eric Estrada, and I work at Zenith. And there's a guy and I'm talking, this is like 20 years ago. He said, a guy has been stealing my identity. And of all things, he walked in here today and presented himself to me as me. And so I tried to grab him, and I ripped his papers, and he ran out. Now, is that a bad thing to require the phony Eric Estrada to produce ID?
It's a common name. We know two people. We know at least two people, legitimate people, that were named Eric Estrada at the time.
Right.
One from California, one from Illinois. So I could say that there might be a third. Now, the real Eric Estrada, right, could have said, wait a second, maybe there's another one of me. What would he have done if his name was, what was the funny one? It was Juan Perez, all right? What would he have done if a guy came in with the name Juan Perez? Or Jesus Garcia? That was the one that blew up the machines. Every time you put that name in, it blew up the Leeds machine and NCIC. They just they locked up, and you could see the smoke from Virginia coming out of machines all the way over there because you put down Jesus Garcia, right? And it didn't matter what birth date it was. There were 50 of them. 50 of them. Same birth date, same name. Totally different people. Totally different FBI numbers. Totally different.
This one was not really bad because it was Eric Estrada voting at the real Eric Estrada's house. So it was a phony Eric Estrada, which to me,
this is 20 years ago.
That would be an automatic go to jail. I don't even think you shouldn't even have to go to court for that one. Because if you're presenting yourself as the guy who's the guy that lives there, and the guy that lives there is really the judge, and he knows who he is. So that's a no-brainer to me.
See, Eric,
but that's a bad thing. It's a bad thing.
Yeah. No, it's not. All right. It's no, it's not. So the funniest thing, I pull up the Bipartisan Policy Center, and the first things I read are very partisan. I'm like, that's so partisan. I'm like, but to the left. So I love how wordsmith the stuff, make it seem nice or make it seem bad. Oh, it's the nuclear option. No, it's just the normal option. It's a normal way. It's a loophole.
Well, here's the problem I have. Okay, and it's a real big problem. Okay. They're making us get this stupid ID with the star in it.
Because what they did, not because of us. Because before
but they're making us get this but they make us get this stupid ID with the star, and they make us get this ID, and they tell you can't go into any federal building without this ID or this. Right? So they made us do that. Okay, so you have to do that. So you do already have an ID, and the argument they're saying is women might have a married name and they don't have their real voting name, and you might be too stupid to find your way to get the ID, or or it's costs money, or it's too onerous or something. But we already have to get the ID. We already have to have the ID if you want to go. So federal elections mean you're voting for federal offices.
Yes.
And federal offices, when you go into them, require you to have this passport, ID, star, whatever. So we can't ask for that for voting. And you know what the most ridiculous thing is? This is the most ridiculous thing. Because as I've said before, for almost 30 years, I never voted in my polling place. I'd either go downtown or go vote early because I was always working. Okay, I was working the election. Okay, do you know when you go to vote now, they ask for your driver's license and they scan the back of it. So they know who you're. So the system's already set up for that. But we don't have to get it, which makes me think, then why is the system set up for that? And what's the exception for the people that don't have it, that they want them to vote so bad? Is this like a 3:00 call that the precinct captain runs his numbers and says, I don't have the houses I need, go down to the, get the stew bums in line and let's bring them all in a bus? I mean, that's to me what it is.
No, and I'm shocked.
Yeah. And then we used to have the phrase, they're passing out a lot of walking around money to get you into the polling place. And you'd see it. They, here, Jake, here, like the double hand with the golf.
Okay, but one of the things they say about this, oh, it's so rare. I'm like, no. Okay, here's where it gets on. Just like one of the previous attorney generals said, oh, voters fraud is not widespread. He was telling the truth because it's specifically targeted. Like you said, they're only going to use that when they're short. All right? They're not going to go to a district or a polling place where they know they're going to carry 70% of the vote, where they know they're going to carry 55% of the vote. They don't care. They're going to go to one where that alderman is a couple hundred votes away from losing, right? And they're going to stack that thing to make sure they get that guy in. It's not widespread. It's very specific and targeted, all right? So when they say, oh, it's only a certain percentage, but where is that percentage? Oh, in key districts. In key districts where it's actually not gerrymandered, where it's 50%, 50%, that's the key districts where you're going to see it, all right? So whereas it's not super widespread, it's still a problem because you put that one person in, you flip that one Senate seat, you flip that one congressman, and you could switch the balance of power in your party's favor. All right? So they're telling people in this bipartisan thing that it's so rare, it doesn't matter, right? It doesn't matter because it's so rare. That's a lie. That's a lie. I mean, okay, you get shot. There's like more spots on the body, on your skin and in your flesh, where if you get shot, you're going to recover, right? But there's a couple of spots where if you get shot, you're gone, all right? So do we say getting shot isn't dangerous because 99% of the places they hit you're going to survive?
I had to interview a guy that got shot at County Hospital, and he showed me his bullet hole. It was in the thigh, and I said, I'm sorry. He goes, oh, that's not that. I've been shot there before. I've been shot here, So you're right. There's some that are, straight by, but then there's some that are pretty bad.
Yeah. All right, we'll see you back. I'm going to get more into this SAVE Act and why you should call your senators and tell them to get off their butts and go in and vote on this thing. Put their money where their mouth is. Either vote against it or vote for it. Don't hide behind a filibuster. That's comrades. We're back for the second quarter of the Chief Guard of the Republic radio show with your co-hosts Paul Burvid and Mike Tuman here on WRMN 1410 out of Elgin. If you're listening on the radio, you know where you're at because that's where your button, you remember the old AM, and you push that button in, and people didn't know how to set it. You had to pull the button out and then push the button in and set it there.
Correct.
So you could also hit us up on the WRMN 1410 on YouTube where they stream live. So we're streaming live there. And you can hit us up in the comments or you call us in at 847-931-1410. So, Paul, like I said, Bipartisan Policy Center, it's hilarious, right? And it came up like the second or third thing down there on the search engine. I said, oh, bipartisan, that sounds nice. And then I started reading. I said, there's nothing bipartisan about this nonsense, right? And they came up with like 5 points on why the SAVE Act is a problem. One, they say, well, It's already required to be a citizen to vote. Why pass a law saying it needs to, it has to be it? Well, the wording isn't exactly like that, so they're correcting the wording, right? And some citizens don't have access to those documents. My question is, if that's true, well, we're going to pass this law, and we're going to say, why do the citizens not have access to those documents? All right? And that's up, again, that could be up to the states or the party and make it easier. There are better ways to provide proof of citizenship. I mean, other than a birth certificate in the United States, I don't see a better way to prove you're a citizen. I mean, you're born here, right? You got your birth certificate, and you're supposed to be a citizen, when you turn 18 to vote. Right? Although they're working on birthright citizenship.
Or as Iggy on Miami Vice would say, your migration papers.
Yeah. So then, unintended consequences for officials and administrators. Like, you're putting them in danger because they might not know the law and they might inadvertently allow someone to violate this law, which will come down on them, And then the final one, the fifth one, is hilarious. It needs more time. We're going to have the 250th anniversary of this country, and they're saying it needs more time. All right? So this is the thing where they're going through the Senate, and it's the 10th Amendment, right? If it isn't specifically stated by the laws of the United States, then it goes to the state. Well, the states run federal elections. They have their laws on how they do it, on who votes, who registers, and everything. And now the feds are coming in, right? And they're saying, okay, well, we're going to adjust this again because we only want citizens to vote and have proof of citizenship to vote. And what is acceptable for proof of citizenship? All right. So these are the. Remember, I says they're always screaming about 1 in a billion. If it saves the life of one child, granted, anything that saves the life of one child, I'm all for. I'm all for, right? Right?
If it doesn't kill any
My
other
thing
children.
is, I'm going to use their logic on them. If it prevents one illegal vote, then it's worth it. If it prevents just one illegal vote, it's worth it. Now, they're going to say, but it's going to prevent one legal vote. Okay, so my logic should work with your logic and cancel each other out. So it should be a good thing, right? It should be a neutral thing. All right, so citizenship already requirement to vote. Yes.
There's provisional voting, though.
Provisional. Okay, let's get to provisional. Back in the 80s, I came back from a 1.5-year tour on active duty with the military. All right? While I was gone, they deregistered me to vote. I come back to vote in my ward, right? And it was contested at that time. It was like the Republican was actually going to get elected. Right? It was that close. So they went with every house that had a red line on it underneath it. Just so you know, when you go in to vote in a primary and you are asked which party you want to vote for, and you say, Republican, there is a poll watcher there with your address drawing a big, thick red line under yours address. And then if you say Democrat, then you get a blue line. So they went in and they deregistered all the red people to vote, right? And so you had to go and re-register. Well, they got notices, but I was in the military. So I come back and I says, hey, I want to vote. And go, nope, I'm contesting your vote because you're not registered. I mean, what are you talking about? I'm registered to vote. I had an old registration card, right? And I show my driver's license, and I show my military ID, right? Like, I got my driver's license here, which in order to get that driver's license, I had to cough up a birth certificate. And they go, no, we'll give you a provisional vote. Do you think they ever counted that provisional vote?
They're supposed to.
Do you think that if I had been overseas or in the military and I cast a military absentee ballot, do you think they would have counted that? They're supposed to. No, they don't. And they just go, they say, well, we protest because there's not a proper chain of custody or whatever. Because they know, for the most part, back in the day, the military would vote very right of center. Some of them voted left, but the predominance of them would carry an election. When that guy ran in Minnesota, all right, the senator, the comedian that ended up, I don't know. Al Franken. He ended up retiring or resigning from the Senate, right? Because he had so many skeletons in his closet started coming out. They did not count one military vote in that. Not one. So you know who got disenfranchised there? By who? By the left. By the military. Because they pick and choose. Oh, wait a second. No. You knew for a fact that they were going to go over to the right, all right? So when they say it's so rare, all right, what they mean is it's specifically targeted. And okay, like Mark Twain said, there's lies, there's damn lies, and then there's statistics. Because you can manipulate that anyone where you want. One of the things I saw out there is if you are so massively incapable of getting an ID to prove your citizenship to vote, right? If you're that incapable, I don't think I want you voting. Right? They used to have they had a test, an IQ test, right? And if you weren't smart enough, they didn't let you vote. And that was considered unconstitutional. But you used to have to be a landowner. You used to have skin in the game to be able to vote. You couldn't just be some guy walking around selling apples out of a cart. You had to be a landowner. That was unconstitutional. So people confuse, right? They had a Supreme Court decision that said that you have to have you have to count everyone in the country, whether legal, illegal, visiting, vacationers, or whatever in the census. In the census, you had to count them all because they're going to represent the people. There's precedence for this, kind of reverse precedence, is that down in the South, which had a much lower population up north, they had a lower population of white people up north, right? They had less white people down south. They had a lot of unpaid servants, slaves. But what was it, like 3/5 of the slave population counted in the census for representation? Yeah. So these were kind of slaves. They weren't citizens. They weren't even kind of considered human, which is wrong, right? But then they said that you had to count that many of them, and that was to get our government up and running, because the South wouldn't have agreed to it because they knew they would be outnumbered, right? So that wasn't a thing they made, but still, you're counting people that aren't allowed to vote. You're counting men and women, children, and people that aren't even won't never be allowed to vote at that time in the census, and that's how they distributed the representation. So here you got it here. They distribute the representation that way, but that doesn't mean that those people have a right to vote just because they're counted in the census, because the Supreme Court, based on previous decisions and previous constitutional things, said, yeah, you have to count them because it's the amount of people. That never said citizen. So they would have to go in now. And again, do I say go out in the streets, and commit mass mayhem, or, become violent, or throw a hissy fit, in the middle of the Walgreens over this stuff? What I say is get with your representative. If you don't like the law, have him introduce a bill to change it. Call him. Call your friends to call their representatives. That's the way we do things. These people in the street and everything, they get out in the street and they scream there. It's like, no, dude, you're not serious. You're not serious. Let me see all the letters you wrote to your congressman. Right. I sent them a text, maybe. So we got a call. See who it is.
Oh,
Hey, how you
guys.
doing?
How
Who
you
do we
doing?
have? Hey, Larry.
Larry. Hi, guys. I have a question. Speaking about the census, we all live in Illinois. How do you feel Illinois has been losing the largest member census population goes down every 10 years, it seems, and we've lost congressional districts. We have gerrymandering. Used to be
Gerrymandering.
Gerrymandering. I actually been to the guy's grave in Washington, D.C., who got
gerrymander. He did that up in Pennsylvania. They named it after him. He was governor of Pennsylvania, I believe.
Okay. Well, it's legal. Yeah, that's the way it is. But how about that? How do you feel living here in Illinois? We've lost more people than any other state, and yet our governor touts the miracle of Illinois like we're doing something great. I just want to hear both your opinions. Now, Paul, you're there too, right?
Yeah, Paul's zoomed in.
Paul, quiet but deadly Paul, okay? My hero.
Hmm.
Paul, you're a former state worker. How do you feel about all this? That Illinois, everyone I talk to wants to leave the state. I live in Park Ridge, and whenever I see people down that I meet with, they say, hey, the taxes are killing me. I don't like the way the state is. I want to leave. It seems just in my own neighborhood of Park Ridge, within a half a block, six families have moved away. And the most common reason I'll tell you is their houses have gone from $200,000 to $500,000 or more, and they don't want to pay all this property tax. Okay, I want to hear your answers.
Okay. I have a lot of friends that are moving and have moved, and you're right. It's causing people to flee. But what's happening is they're still going to vote the way they're going to vote, the politicians, because they think they're doing it right. And this is like the Titanic of states. Okay, so the iceberg is right out there, and they're still going to vote this way, and they're going to keep voting this way because they're heck bent on doing what they're going to do. We're right or wrong, we become the destination state for abortions. Okay, right or wrong, we become the destination state for criminal activity. Right or wrong, we become this. So, but what I've noticed, though, and I've noticed this more so now than ever, okay, I see all these residential developments in areas that were farmland. And so I know we're losing population, but who's buying these houses? Where are they coming from? What are they?
So
we were out in the Homer Glen area the other day, and we went to a party last Saturday actually at our friend's house. There was a huge area that was kind of forested. There's 400 homes that popped up there. And that's all I'm seeing are these huge residential areas, whether they're single family, duplexes, or whatever. So, I hear the same stories you do. I know the same people that are moving, but who's moving in? Where are they coming from? And I've mentioned this before on the station. The problem is, even if we lose a lot more people, we're only going to lose one seat. So there's still going to be, enough seats per year.
All right. So Larry, all right. So this is my view on it. A little bit different than Paul's. When people don't think that their vote matters anymore, they're all right. When they think that they vote and it doesn't matter because they've just collected a vote from the local nursing home of people that are non-compos mentis, all right? And they put it in there and cancels my votes out, right? When I feel that I'm not being heard or listened to, I can still vote with one thing in this country. I could vote with one thing in this country. I vote with my feet. I move. I go out and I go to somewhere where I feel my vote's going to count. All right. Now, they don't care about me because I never voted their way anyways. All right. The people in charge don't care if I move out because even if they lose one congressional seat, what I've done is I have watered down the conservative base. Now it's even weaker because I've moved out, right? And others like me have moved out. You have the reverse. I agree with Paul. You have people moving out of California that voted all these liberal policies in with stars in their eyes and everything's going to be good, and there's going to be teddy bears all over the place and unicorns, and I'll have a unicorn will deliver my Starbucks in the morning, and then they realized that they were burning their city to the ground, that everything was filthy dirty, that their taxes have been tripled, so they move out to a state like Colorado or to Arizona, because the weather's clement in Arizona, and then they vote the same way they voted before, and all of a sudden Arizona flips, or Colorado flips, because the people are bringing their policies with them. All right, there's not enough of people like me, moving out to somewhere else, but there's a movement of those demographics. As far as Illinois goes, they don't care. Now they're pushing. When the census comes up in 2030, right? Which is 4 years away, all right, but it'll be a midterm year again. If they're able to pass a law that that says by law we will only count U.S. citizens in the census, so we will only base you will only base the representation by U.S. citizens, all right? So that will have a huge effect, because now, they're not counting the illegals. They're not counting people that aren't citizens, people who are just visiting for whatever reason. So the representation in some of these states that have sanctuary policies, and they attract more people in there through welfare and everything else, that is going to, the representation is going to go down considerably, absolutely considerably, right? But they're hoping that doesn't happen. Right now, they just want to maintain their representation by the numbers, and people that are illegal are great for that. Now, not every illegal votes. Here's where it really gets, where people argue it, right? So some guy's illegal. He goes to get a driver's license because the governor said he could have one, right? And their answer to that was, well, if he gets one, he's going to get insurance. He never buys insurance. But as soon as he goes to get his driver's license, what did they do, Paul? They register to vote. You're a motor voter. Now you're on a list of voters, right? Yeah. But they know who these guys are, that aren't citizens. Like they said, the government should already have access to that. Those are the ones that they print up and say they mail out. They say they mail out those ballots. They say they mail them out. They know these guys aren't going to come in to vote, right? No one's going to say you already voted. And then when they call, when the alderman's flunky says, I need 500 more votes, they go to the suitcase, they pull out 501 votes, and they throw them down from the motor voter rolls, knowing that these guys never went in to vote. So I'm not saying that illegals go in and vote, right? I'm not saying that they go in and vote, but being registered illegally, all right, they're not supposed to register to vote, but no one's going to lock them up for registering to vote, because motor voter vote, what are you going to do, lock up the Secretary of State? Lock up everyone that works at the Secretary of State's office? That's not going to happen. But they do it intentionally. Well, how do I know he wasn't a citizen? Well, did he show you a birth certificate? No. Did he show you any documentation when you gave him that driver's license? No, he told us his name was Juan Garcia or Jesus Garcia. Yeah, okay. But I go in there, when I went in to get my ID, what we call real ID, right? When I went in to get it, I had my military discharge papers. I had my birth certificate. I had my retiree military ID. I had my original driver's license. I had a unopened utility bill with me, right? I had my bank account, right? And I'm like, I go in there and they look at it and they wave me by, right? Now I had to come in with all that. So got pretty easy for me. But there was a lady there, you know, and like everyone in front of me had a special problem on this, and it was so simple, and they couldn't explain it to them, right? We can't give you the real ID because you don't have a U.S. birth certificate. We don't accept your Mexico voter's ID. Did I say that right, Paul?
Right.
The Mexican voter ID?
Yeah.
Do they have an ID to vote in Mexico?
No.
Yes, they do. They require an ID to vote in Mexico. They absolutely do. Do you know they go down to the consulate over on Ashland Avenue? Right?
Well, you're talking like a matricular type thing.
They have a voter ID in Mexico.
Yeah, well,
right?
we call it something else, but yeah, okay.
Right. So they come, you know, they're here in the United States illegally, but when it's time to vote in Mexico, right, they all go to the consulate and vote.
Right.
They cast their votes, and they won't take their vote without their voter ID. Listen,
Right.
I've locked up a lot of people, searched them, inventoried their stuff, and guess what they have? A Mexican voter ID. You know,
guys, I'm gonna get off here.
right next to their state of Illinois driver's license.
Yeah.
Larry, the easiest thing you could do is get some people together like yourself, okay? And start getting like a petition together. And just have it real simple. Can we cap Illinois property tax? Doesn't matter what party we're from. We want to cap Illinois property tax. If you get a couple, if you got,
it is capped, isn't it? I mean,
no. If you got enough people together and presented that to your politicians, they would be afraid. Because they would be afraid that they would be thrown out of office by somebody saying, I'm going to pick up this thing. They'll start doing it themselves because they got a plan where they want to cap it now or they want to remove it. But it's not going to take effect for about 10 or 12 years. By then, they'll already have the state controlled and they don't care. But the easiest thing you could do would be get a petition together. And you know, you're going to get people that are crazy enough to say, I don't want to sign that. I want to pay more property tax because it's for the children. But what they're not understanding is there's fewer and fewer children, okay, that are going to school and things like that. But if you got yourself a group together and all you got to do is say, we want to cap the tax. And no one should technically be against that. Because it's not a partisan issue.
All right, we got to go to break. Cap the property tax. Get rid of the property taxes.
Right.
Six Bayonets, comrades. This is Chief Guard, the Republic Radio Show with your co-hosts Mike Tuman and Paul Burvitt every Saturday noon until 2 on WRMN 1410 AM. And you know you're here because you're on the dial at 1410 or you're WRMN1410.com or you're on WRMN 1410's YouTube channel. So you know you're going to be here. And Paul, all right, so all the housing developments, I saw this in the 80s, right? Again, down in Texas, when I was down in Texas with the military. Texas was a big oil boom, especially in the 70s due to certain president's policies. We were pumping oil like mad. We couldn't pump enough, right? Because there was an embargo on things, and we had, right? So it became a big boom in Texas, and they said, well, we got to house all these workers and all the trickle-down workers, because when you have wealth, you go out and you spend wealth, and you want to buy things, and people got to work retail, and people got to work the service industry, and people got to manufacture stuff, all right? And so they went out, and there were all these housing developments that went up, and then, boop, it went boom, right? It went, not boom, but it went plop, right? The boom went pop instead of bagoom, and went pop, right? And what happened? They had all these abandoned housing things that completely finished and everything. So if you were living on base and you were married and you moved off base, you got this like palatial estate. You're an E5 or an E4, like lower enlisted ranks, right? Your lower enlisted rank, and you get this palatial estate because they were just trying to rent to everyone, and the government was paying you the housing allowance. So the housing allowance they gave you would rent you a real nice place out there. Well, these people that are putting up these housing developments, that didn't start in mid-November of 2025. right? Or 2024, mid-November 2024. Those things didn't start then. Those deals were made before that, all right? Everything was started. And they said, man, we're going to have a big influx, not only we're planning on a big influx of people. We need somewhere for them to live. And most of them are going to be Section 8 or they're going to be government supported, right? So there's a guaranteed rent money there. But we need to put these up. Well, we got some land over here. Okay, so deals are made with the local politicians and everything. And you got to get money from the banks. But haven't seen people get burned on this stuff in the past, big, what I call them white people housing projects, right? They put through these big housing developments, and then no one moves into them, right? And then all the money's lost. It's like it's abandoned, right? It's abandoned property. And then it has to go Section 8 or it has to go real low rent or whatever, and the properties are just destroyed, and people lose a lot of money. So what happens is they got to guarantee, or they half build them and they walk away, like down in Haiti, all right? A guy gets a pocket full of cash. You know what he does? He starts building his little palace, right? And then he lends out of money. It's only half built. And he's living in a half built palace. No roof, no nothing. It's wild. But same thing happens there. Then they half build it and they abandon it and they go away. It's going to cost more to tear it down than it's even worth, So they have to have guarantees that it's completely built, right? Because it's easier to dump on the market a completely built building than a promise of one being finished, right? So what happened is that this is the 5-year plan. They got it, now it's built. Well, what you have now is people are leaving the state because of state policies and property taxes, and the people that were flooding into the state before, not so much now. So these people are totally bet. It's a gamble. Investments are a gamble. It's not a sure thing, right? And they shouldn't be bailed out when they fail. Should not be bailed out when they fail. They took a gamble, they lost. Now they're going to try to dump that loss on someone else. So if I could bribe my local politician a couple $1,000s and I'm able to dump off a couple $100,000 or millions of dollars in debt because I gave this guy a couple bucks, you think I'm going to do it? Yep.
Oh, yeah.
All right. And then that's why it's not because it's not because, hold on a second, Paul. Talk to people a bit.
Well, that's one of the issues. The problem that I'm seeing though is these places are filling up, people are moving in them, and it's kind of wild. I mean, there's a lot of people that are moving into these developments, and they're fully paying for them. So I don't know.
Well, they could be moving out of the city too.
Well, that's true too. That is absolutely.
It's fleeing from the city, or it's fleeing from the bigger cities, maybe from Rockford or anything. And it may also be, all right, to go to the other end of the spectrum here, Paul, right, is that we're seeing a reduction in inflation. We're seeing an increase in actual wealth, right, and actual spending money. And now maybe people are buying, all right?
True.
So either way, but what I've seen is you do a housing development, you're going to do it all the way to the end, and then, all right, then whether it's you're going to have, there's going to be contracts in place to make sure you do that. Because if you don't do that, right, if you're a lender and you don't do that, you don't have a contract, you don't have a way to financially punish a person for not having due diligence, right? Then you deserve to take the spanking. But
right.
Look, Fort Sheridan. This is a military thing. This is the government for you, right? 5-year plans, right? So they already knew, that Fort Sheridan was shutting down as an active duty post. But before this was through the BRAC, the Base Realignment and Closing Act, right? But before they had done that, they had already approved to build a new PX and a new commissary, because the ones at Fort Sheridan were just in old warehouses, right? So they approved this, and they made contracts to build it and everything. Well, you would think with the Base Realignment and Closing Act that they would have looked into it and they would have said, no, cancel those. We're not going to build them. But you got contracts with people. Yeah, well, we'll make good to them somehow, but we're not going to spend all these money to build a thing that's going to literally close a year after it opens. We're going to build a brand new Walmart, knowing that it's going to close in a year. Walmart wouldn't do that. Costco wouldn't do that. Target wouldn't do that. Walgreens wouldn't do that. Starbucks wouldn't do that. None of them would do it. U.S. government would, knowing it was closing. For sure. Not even a doubt about it. It's definitely going to close a year after it opens. But the funny thing was, when you go into the commissary, there's no taxes, right? It's federal government. There's no taxes. There's a 5% surcharge to use it. And that's to keep the commissary open. So I go into this new commissary that's got a sign on it saying it's going to close on a certain date, and they're charging me a 5% surcharge to keep it open. I go, but it's not going to stay open. So why are you charging us this money? Yeah, see, it makes no sense. They don't make any sense. None of this stuff makes sense. You become their enemy when you start making sense, because they don't understand sense.
That's true.
All right? Here's the thing. This is all common sense. Why should we even protect it? Hey, if I walk in to the Democrat meeting,
board
right?
office?
Meeting, just meeting a Democrat, board meeting, and they start voting, and I sit down and I say nay, and my vote carries. They go, "Who are you?" I go, "What does it matter? I'm here." But that's different. No. The only thing we have, like, other than our rights, our free rights in the United States, if you're not a convicted felon, in some states it doesn't even matter. Maine and Vermont, I think, you could be convicted of heinous murders, right? And you could still vote, right? But the only thing I have is my vote. It's my vote. I haven't committed any crime. I don't have to have a penny to my name. I don't have to have a place to live. I got my vote. I got my one vote because I'm born here and I'm a citizen. And by letting someone who's not a citizen vote, you've taken away my franchise. You've stolen my vote from me. That person has stolen the only thing I had. The only thing. I could steal half of something from someone, they still have half of something. Stole the only thing I have from me. All right? And how did they do that? By illegally voting. Why did they do it? Because it was allowed. Why did they allow it? Well, there's the question. They either allowed it because they're lazy, or because they're stupid, or because they had a plan. I would say it's number 3, because they had a plan. So the people that are squealing about this go with what I call their nuclear option, right? Oh, but what if one person wasn't allowed to vote? One person that was allowed to vote didn't get to vote. Oh, my God. Oh, tears. The whole election would have changed on that person's vote. No. Hey, get off your butt and make sure you're allowed to vote. That's your franchise. The government. Hey, how about this one? Why don't we mandate that you vote? Why don't we mandate that every citizen in the United States has to vote, and if he doesn't vote, we throw you in the Who Scout for 30 days? What would they say then? I mean, you got to show up in person to vote. If you register to vote in the United States, right? If you register to vote, or someone registers to you to vote, that you have to show up and vote. You absolutely have to show up and vote. If you don't want to show up and vote, deregister yourself, and then have the government have to take your name off the list. What is it with this, Paul? Paul, tell me why. Tell me why they fight to keep dead people on a voter's registration. To keep people that have moved out of state and registered in another state. Why did they keep them on Illinois' voter registration?
So they could have people vote in their place.
Yeah. Is there any other reason for that?
None whatsoever.
Is there a reason why, other than that, that's the only reason they don't, when you say, like, the big joke I had, right, is you get sworn in by the judge. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? And you go, what? And let them go free?
Yeah.
We swear to, well, when they say they don't want to do that and they show that they don't want to do it, you only assume that they're using that vote for nefarious reasons. There's nefarious reasons behind it because it makes no sense not to take them off. Right? It's like you send out Christmas cards and you don't get one returned from someone and you take them off the list, right? You don't keep sending them out stuff, right? And,
Right.
I send out dues notices and they come back, person don't live here, right? I'm not going to send that out again. Right? Waste the 75 cents. Why? The voter rolls should be absolutely clean. There should be a law for that. But there you get going to courts and said, no, some judge says, no, you can't do that. Why? Ask the judge exactly why. Well, you might take off someone that's still around. Oh, the 1 person in a million. Well, they could re-register, couldn't they, Paul?
Correct.
If they were alive and compos mentis, right?
Right.
They weren't, got feeding tubes and air pumping into them and everything, right? Then they could go re-register to vote. So the only reason they're doing it is for nefarious reasons. That makes sense to me. And I don't see anyone I don't see San Francisco Dave calling in and saying, well, that's not true. Right? Go ahead. Give me one good reason other than, someone might have to re-register to vote. Because I re-registered to vote. They took me off the voter rolls. I was a living, talking U.S. veteran. And they took me off the voter rolls, and I had to go re-register. I didn't get an apology. And that was so the party in charge at the time, it's in Chicago, so take a guess, right? Could get their guy into the alderman's office or keep their guy into the alderman's office. Because the guy running against them was pretty close. Pretty close. Even with all the Molotovs they threw through his window. He was still pretty close. So it just makes me, it's so obvious, and the people that are, they're either, and I hate to think of them as delusional or stupid, right? Some of these people aren't stupid. I would say that they're inundated with information from our friends of the fourth arm of the Democratic Party. We used to call it the fourth estate, but now it's just the fourth arm of the Democratic Party. They're just told stuff over and over like this. The Bipartisan Policy Center. Oh, yeah, everyone knows it's a requirement to vote as a citizen, but when was the last time a non-citizen, other than the guy, what was the guy? Was he in Minnesota? Yeah, he was in Minnesota. Iowa. He was the head of the Board of Education for somewhere. He was an illegal alien convicted felon that came in with some magic paperwork, right? He not only voted, they were paying him out of the government, and he got a government job. No one background checked him. Everyone that signed off on his hiring should be in prison, right next to him. You know what? For not doing their due diligence, because he put people at risk, put children at risk, and he stole the money, and no one's ever going to recover the money that he stole. Right, Paul?
Right.
See,
exactly.
I need to read the rules on voting, right? Because the last time I read them, and I may have misinterpreted them, and they could have been changed, right? Is that it wasn't illegal to register to vote if you weren't legal to vote. It wasn't a crime for you to register to vote. It was only a crime when you did vote. So you could register all you want, but it's not a crime until you actually vote, right? And if you actually vote, you know who was guilty of the crime? The person who registered to you to vote, not you. So who's going to go after that person? What was it, Acorn? How many people from Acorn went to prison?
None, unless it was for fraud or something.
Yeah, but all you need is one guy to register, one illegal to vote, and then they're guilty of registering to vote because he's illegal. Now you're going to throw, like I said, the Secretary of State in prison through motor voter? So obviously that rule was changed. Maybe they made it where it's illegal. If you're not legal to vote, you go to prison for 10 years. But they're not going to do that either. We got enough dope dealers, rapists, and murderers in prison. Robbers, armed robbers in prison. We ain't got room for some goof that goes in and votes when he's not supposed to. Some of these, people were even proud. There was an election in Alabama, right? They say there's no fraud out there, right? Election in Alabama for the senator to take over Jeff Sessions' place, which was a big dumb move, right? Putting him as attorney general, and he has to step down from the Senate, right? You couldn't have picked a bigger goof. But then you left that Senate seat vacant. People came from Mississippi. They came from Tennessee. They came from Kentucky. They came from Georgia, right? They came from Florida, all to vote in that Senate election. They didn't even live in Alabama. And apparently the Democrat came in a landslide in a red state. Why did he win? Oh, because people in Alabama were tired of. No, they weren't. Because the people in Alabama in key districts invited these people in to make sure that they voted. They came in person, they gave them a fake name, or they just registered them to vote that day, and they voted. And they carried the thing because people didn't mind burning a tank of gas to do that. Anyone that says that we shouldn't take the most extreme actions to protect their personal franchise to vote is not a serious person. Don't deal with them. I want the government to DNA test me to make sure I'm who I am when I vote. And everyone. I want it so hard to vote, right? I want to make it so you have to be a citizen. I want not hard to vote. I mean, show up there, right? But I want it as strict as possible. If you're going to vote, you are a U.S. citizen beyond the shadow of a doubt. All right? That's all we want, voting in our election. People that have skin in our game. Hey, why do you think we didn't, the Japanese and the Germans did it wrong. The Germans did it really wrong. Obviously, we had a large German population here. They should have just threw more Germans over to the United States and voted whoever they wanted in office so we wouldn't go to war with them. We wouldn't go to war with them when Japan bombed us. They should say, hey, we're just going to put a lot of people there, move a lot of people and move a lot of refugees in. They wouldn't have stood for that. Now you have an invasion. They don't even have to fight us. They walk in and they vote. And the people allowing them to vote are voting for policies to keep themselves in power, keep their friends in power, all right? And keep the mobs from climbing over the fences and robbing their houses. That's it. They care nothing about the country. Their policies are counterproductive to national defense. The most important thing in national defense is to have people that live here with skin in the game, voting for how the government is run and how we defend ourselves from other countries. Look at the Chinese. The Chinese have a thing. All right, so birthright citizenship. You're born here, you're a citizen. People say, oh, yeah, that should be. I'm sorry. My grandmother married my grandfather, who was a foreign national, right? Came over from Poland after World War I. There was a reestablished Poland. He came over from there. They stripped her of her citizenship and made her become naturalized, even though she was born in Indiana. Right? What the Chinese have done is they allow pregnant women to fly over to the United States to have their babies in a U.S. hospital, and then they fly them back to China. And so they have a plethora of babies from China that are U.S. citizens now. And the only thing they have to show that they're a U.S. citizen is a birth certificate, because as soon as they were born, they went back over to China now. So in 18 years, 20 years, you got fighting age males that have been indoctrinated in China their whole lives. But they come over with their visa because they go to the U.S. consulate and they say, here's my birth certificate. I'm a U.S. citizen. And they all come over here, let's say 100,000 at once, right? And they all move to San Francisco, and suddenly all these Chinese troop ships come in and just dock at San Francisco, but you got 100,000 fighting men right there, right now, already there. And if that doesn't scare you, I don't know what will. Fix Bennett's Comrades, this Chief Guard of the Republic radio show with your co-hosts Mike Tooman and Paul Burvid every Saturday, noon until 2 on WRMN1410.com. Or WRMN 1410, just 1410 on the AM radio. We're out of Elgin. Go WRMN1410.com. It'll give you the links for YouTube Live, or it'll give you the links to stream it, because sometimes 2,000 watts of mighty Elgin power don't make it out to the whole world. Let me give a shout out to my Dunkin' Donuts veterans buddies. I actually gave away my Dunkin' Donuts veterans card. We had little cards, not with your name on it or anything, but it told people where to go. So I saw this guy, he's a veteran, glad handed him and everything. I says, hey, you should come to Dunkin' Donuts veterans every Tuesday at 9 o'clock on 7039 West Dempster. There it is. My wonderful producer got it up. All right, the Dunkin' Donuts. If you're a veteran, or if you're someone who likes veterans or has a veteran person and you want to hear about veteran stuff, show up. It's good. It's good informational stuff and glad people. Okay, so so I think the most precious thing we have in this country, next to our families, life is precious. And you know what? It's the thing. I would say it's the most precious. Okay, you have faith in God. Okay, so second precious, but something that it has no physical substance, right? It's your vote, right? If it was on a piece of paper and it mattered something, and you had to, you put it in and they gave you back and everything, and it would have some substance, some value, but it has no substance. It's something in the abstract, but it's the most precious abstract thing you have as a U.S. citizen, beyond a doubt. And if you're not encouraging people to protect that, if you're saying it doesn't need to protect it, I'm saying you're not a serious person. We got a call on the line. Well, maybe Dave from San Francisco heard me mention his name. I'll be nice to Dave. He listens to the show. I appreciate that. Whatever way you're on, whatever side you're on, left, right, in the middle, don't care. I'll be nice to you. Who do we have on the line? Apparently nobody. It's probably one of those nuisance calls. Is that spam likely, or is it fraud risk? I keep asking my girlfriend who these guys are, spam likely and fraud risk. I keep calling her phone. But if I hadn't said it before, happy Valentine's Day. I think I did.
You did.
All right. So, and like, why the vote is so important, That's what, the Founding Fathers, it was a different time, a different time. These guys were great men of their time. If you compare them, what they did to the social mores of today, they're not going to stand up. But if you went back with your social mores to their time, you'd probably be tarred and feathered and burned at the stake. It's like, all right. So They wanted, they knew, they wanted people to be educated.
You know why they were great men?
Why?
No television.
No television.
Right. They had nothing but time to read and debate and discuss.
Yeah.
And then they developed great ideas and great principles, and they were able to think it out. And you want to know something else?
What?
You know why TV stinks now?
Because I don't watch
They
it.
don't have the people that could write and convey in a 30-minute episode what people are taking months and months to convey. Some of the best episodic television was done by writers that could tell you the whole story succinctly and yet dramatically in 30 minutes. We don't do that anymore. We just, roll along. We're not thinkers. We're not planners. We're not reasoners. We're just, we're in it. To think that these concepts that these guys came up with over 250 years ago that are more relevant than the concept that our guys are coming up with now is just incredible to me. I mean, it's like the more we advance, the more we walk back, because, these guys had nothing to do but read classics, debate them, wonder, and some of their theories are still outstanding, and they've been proved the test of time. And some of the music is like fantastic, and the literature and the art, we have, it's like that old episode, on Saturday Night Live.
It's sad.
It's crap now.
It's sad because even the intelligentsia, the rich men of leisure that didn't have to scrape in the mud to get the next meal to feed their family, that were too busy, cutting down the weed and busting out the shaft and all that other stuff. The guys that had money and they were kind of men at leisure, right? And they could study this stuff and they could go to Rome, right? They could study in the great universities. They still didn't have access to what your basic drooling second grader, the access to the information that your basic drooling second grader in a public school has through his tablet. I mean, all the information in the world, probably everything that's ever been written out there. It's right there for you. It's right there for you. I guarantee you everything that has ever been classified as top secret, that is still classified as top secret, is probably out there in the open somewhere. You just don't know it's top secret. It's like, it's out there in the open somewhere. And yes, but we're lazy. We're lazy. Why should I think about it when Chat GPT will tell me, when Grok will tell me? I look at this stuff and I said, like I said, you got to go down, you got to scroll down to the 10th, 15th, 20th entry on Google before you find anything even remotely close to what you asked about, because everything else is an advertisement. Yeah, it's a shame when you could think when your building's burning down, right, and you live next to everyone else, and everyone else has to come out and help you because you're in townhomes and they're one on top of the other, right? They're going to come out and help you. If you live far enough away where your building doesn't matter and your neighbors hate you, there's no fire department coming to save you. So you got to maintain relationships with your neighbor. Right, back in the day, you insulted a guy and he challenged you to a duel, right? Or you got in a fight and the police didn't lock you up because it was a fight. Dude had it coming, right? Nowadays, people are afraid of offending someone in the slightest way because they're afraid of being doxxed, because they're afraid of being tried in the court of public opinion. And the court of public opinion is an ignorant mob that do exactly what you say. They haven't read the classics. I ask people, I says, have you read Don Quixote, right? Don Quixote. the Man of La Mancha. And they go, oh, yeah, that's about the guy that tilts at windmills. I go, no, you never read it. You heard about it. You never read it. You saw a cartoon, maybe. You never read it. Because it's not. It's a 1,600-page... It's a 1,600-page book filled with short stories, short love stories, that Cervantes uses Don Quixote to take you from one love story to another. They're all totally unrelated. You know, there's really no plot because it's all separate stories. Like you said, Cervantes comes, he takes one chapter, he gives you a whole story in that one chapter, and then he moves on because next week he's got another chapter for you. All right? And yeah, writers are formulaic now. Stephen King's a great writer. No. The mob loves him because he's vanilla. He's vanilla. Oh, someone said he loved him. They loved him. He wrote a novel, and everyone says, oh, this is great. This is great. You read his novels over and over. It's the same formula over and over and over. Oh, let me switch the bad guy from a undead cat to a rabid dog. You know, same thing. It just goes. But that's what people consider literature. He'll be forgotten. You know, no one's great in anything. You ask, okay, Les Miserables, did you read it? Oh, yeah. No, they may have saw a play. And then you ask them, well, what did Jean Valjean die of? You know what he died of, Paul?
No.
A broken heart. He died. It was tragic. It was a terribly tragic ending, right? But they're like, oh, yeah, the French Revolution and everything. Had nothing to do with the French Revolution. Zero to do with it, right? People say they've read the classics, but what they've actually read is not even the cliff notes, right? The cheat sheets for the study. But those books had some meaning to them, you know? You read them and you're like, Jean Valjean, he's a criminal, right? He was a criminal, but you felt for him, right? Because he was a better man than the squeaky clean police officer chasing him. You know, the television. Okay, well, unless you're a television call-in show, which you don't see a lot of them, right? And I have to say that they really screen their calls pretty well. Then, if they do have one, right? You're not having interaction. Radio here, we have call-in interaction. We have some people to call in. We interact with them. We have questions. I'm out here and open for an open discussion. Television is a one-way window. The actors can't see you. You know, they call it breaking the fourth wall, right? Oh, I'm acting like I'm interacting with you, but you're not. You know, you filmed this thing 3 years ago, and now it's finally on the screen. It's not going to change based on my opinion. It's not going to change based on the horror of my face. The horror of me watching this, you know, it's a one-way pellet, and it's screaming whatever propaganda, whatever lean it's got on there. No, nothing out there. Paul, are we center?
I am. I know you are.
I think I lean right. I'll admit to it. I lean right. I try to be center. I try to listen to everyone's opinion. But I keep going over to being a little bit more conservative in my thoughts, although I have some liberal beliefs, right? Like, I'm against the death penalty. That's a liberal belief. But I'm also against the death penalty for children, for babies. And that seems to be a conservative belief that conflicts with the liberal belief. But the conservative belief of, you know, death penalty for certain crimes conflicts with my belief in the sanctity of life. Right? I like... You can't get that off a TV set. It's most of the time, I'm going to say, because birds of a feather. You know what I mean, Paul?
Mm-hmm.
Is if you hang out long enough with a bunch of conservatives, your views are going to become more conservative because that's all you're going to hear. You're in the echo chamber. If you hang out with people that are very liberal, you're going to become more than liberal because that's what you're going to hear because it's all an echo chamber of liberalism. Here, again, I don't want that to be the echo chamber. Right? TV, I think, is a blatant echo chamber of liberalism. And why is it liberal? Because the people making these shows, the crew, at one time, who knows what Hollywood was, right? A lot of pro-American stuff getting made during the war. The wars, everything. But a lot of the people there have a certain viewpoint. So if you want to go get a project done in that thing that's going to get full exposure, right? That's going to hit every movie theater out there, that's going to get your point of view across, they have to agree with it. They're not going to fund something they disagree with, even if it's going to make a lot of money. Even if it was going to make a lot of money, they're not going to fund it. Look at Mel Gibson, right? He made some very, what did The Passion of the Christ make, like $1 billion? $1 billion, and he funded that himself. He did the Apocalyptico. He did a lot of stuff. He leans very right. But he had the money to do that. He had hit it big. He had, saved his money. He had the connections. He knew how to do it, and he did it by himself. No one really helped him with that, and he made $1 billion. And before he had made that $1 billion and got real big, he was persona non grata for a while because of his conservative beliefs, right? They did everything on that. So he's an offshoot there, right? He's an offshoot of this stuff. A lot of independent stuff will never get out there. What was I haven't seen it, but I got to go and see it if it's still in the theaters. The Millennia documentary. We
saw that 2 weeks ago.
How was it?
It was great. You would think that it's a girl flick, but it really isn't. They talk about her. Getting her everything ready. It's the 20 days before the inauguration, but they cover the fact that her mother died the year before. She goes to church to light a candle, and then that's at St. Patrick's Cathedral, and she's in there by herself with the Secret Service and the church people. Then they cover the funeral of President Carter, and then they cover her, design for the dresses. And, you think that's really kind of boring, but it actually isn't, because it gets into her background and what it is. And then they talk about her what she wants for her children, her son. And then they talk about she didn't want him to get out of the car and walk on the inauguration. And because of the weather, they couldn't do that. Then she talks about her favorite song, but then she talks about immigrants. The people that did her dresses were immigrants. They're well-to-do now, but they came over here as immigrants. And then she met with Siegel's wife, the hostage, and she told her that she would work with her husband. And the woman's husband was released like 12 days after he was inaugurated through his workings. Now, people make fun of the movie, and
No, not people. The critics made fun of it. It got like a 98 score on Rotten Tomatoes.
I actually saw reviews of people that went in there and made fun of the people. Now, I have to say, we went to about a 45% filled theater. It was a daytime, and a lot of the people were my age or older. But a lot of people clapped at the end of it. And, it was a well-done documentary, okay? And they showed you the security detail, and, he's in there very little himself. It's mostly about her. And then they take pictures of her at the end standing on a table. And, it's a great film. It's not, you can't get politics from it, really. It's just, but people are dissing her for that, and they're making fun of her. And I've seen the day we were at the theater, people, it was the first day, okay, and people were making fun, and they were talking stupid and stuff like that. But that's just the intolerance of the media. That's the intolerance of the talking heads. You know, you don't have to like her to appreciate what goes into this. And they talked about, it was kind of interesting because the new president and the vice president and their wives saw off the old president, okay, with the helicopter. And they said, but we all have to be inside before the helicopter can leave. So as in case there's a crash, that, we're all protected.
Yeah.
There's interesting things about that. And there's interesting things about, she speaks French. She talked to Macron's wife about some common issues. And then there was a wife of a Middle Eastern kingdom's president they have remarkably the same philosophy and group, and I could see where people would disrespect it because they don't like the person, but you don't give it a chance. Okay, people aren't giving it a chance. So it was actually a really good film. I enjoyed it. It's been years since I've been to a theater. I mean, it's been almost 8 years since I've been to a theater. And it was actually, I went to the theater that I worked at as a guard after my dad passed away. And, it was the first time I was back at the theater in about 8 years. So, it was good. And you should see it. And, take as many people to see it as you can, because, it's very nice.
Yeah. So I'll definitely take Diane to see it. That's what I get though with the Fourth Estate, all right. And what they were saying is that, all right, the critics, all right, they came out, they're all in their same social network, they're all in their same level group, that they're so much smarter than you, they're the ones that are wearing the paisley ties and the sweater vest,
There was also a significant portion of where they honored the soldiers that were the last ones killed, and I think it was Iraq, and it was several years later, but I think it was something he wanted to do, and they showed you at the Tomb of the Unknowns. I mean, and then they showed you two of the balls, the military ball and the Starlight ball. And you could tell it was pro military, and then you got to see her escort in to. Oh yeah,
that staff sergeant. What a lucky dude, huh?
Yeah, it was really really well done film. Really well done. Yeah. Now that presents another thing. They're also now the talking heads are saying that I believe it was produced by Amazon. And now they're calling it the $40 million bribe. Okay, so that but needless to say, it was an excellent product, and it flowed. You're there for about 2 hours, and you don't really realize it. And it's a lot of behind the scenes. Where her going in and out of vans and going to places, and they're talking about. As something I didn't know, during the first administration, her parents lived at the White House. But since her mother died, her father lives at the White House. And, the president said some wonderful things about her mother and father. And you could tell that, there's some family stuff that goes on. They're a family. And he's the president, she's the first lady, but they're a real family. And it's very interesting.
Well, it's probably pretty good that the Obamas had set up separate apartments for their mother-in-law, so that
right.
So when you say, "Oh my God, an in-law is living in there. Why are we paying to keep her?" Blah blah. Okay, well, all right. Well, let's go back and whoa, that's different. How? Again, how?
Yeah, I know.
Hey, you know what it is here? They say that person also becomes a target due to their relationship. And to have them close in there, you don't have to have all the extra Secret Service running around. right?
Right.
Because they're kept close. It's almost like being in prison. We're going to keep you. No, you're not in prison. You're in protective custody. Seems like prison to me. All right. So next week we'll come back.
Happy Valentine's Day.
Happy Valentine's Day, and hopefully these lame ass senators will get back to work and vote.
There's a partial shutdown too. Don't forget.
I know. I didn't even get to talk about that because guess what? Those lame good senators didn't vote.
Take care. Have a great week.